Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us for today's Channel Expert Hour in the live session. We're really glad that you could find some time in your busy calendar to join us, and so we want to make sure that this is an interactive and productive conversation for you guys. Today we're going to be discussing the concept of the divide between the NOC and the SOC, and we'll get into explaining all of those details as we go through the conversation here, but we've recognized an opportunity at the end user level where customers have a lot of specialization but not nearly as much integration as they need to in terms of the way that they are operating networks and security and managing the question of uptime and performance versus the protection and resiliency of those kinds of resources. So great conversation, lots of really valuable details that we're going to go through on today's stuff. Before we get into the content, let me just kind of go through some housekeeping items and then we'll get busy. By way of introduction, my name is Ryan Morris, and I'll be your host today. I am a contributing editor on the Penton Technology team, and we are going to be working today with our friends from AccelOps. As we go through the conversation, as I indicated, we do want this to be an interactive session. So if you have questions or comments and feedback as we go through, we would invite you to do that at any point starting now as we go through and all the way to the end. We will reserve some time at the end of the conversation to manage as many of those live questions as we can, and we'll get through those things, but don't wait until then necessarily. Just at any point that you feel like you've got a question, feel free to type that in. The best way to do that, click on that red Q&A tab and you will be able to submit a question in writing. In addition to that, we found that there's a lot of great value to be found through the Twitter conversations that you guys are having during and after this conversation. So there's a Twitter tab enabled here in this environment where if you click on that button, it will allow you to send out information to your community and followers that and share the information that you're learning during today's conversation. Really good opportunity to kind of make this social and keep things as interactive as possible. We do get a lot of questions when we start these things about the window where the slide appears, and we want to make sure that you know that is customizable so that you can optimize for your monitor and viewing environment. You can click on the corner to resize. You can click on the bar and drag to reposition, and that way kind of keep all of your things going in your world during the conversation as well. Quick summary then of the topics that we're going to cover in today's conversation. First of all, we're going to take a look at what we mean when we say NOC and SOC and what's common among those two different elements of infrastructure management and what the differences are and where some of the common challenges come in. We're going to take a look at some research findings from our friends at Gartner and look at what some of the business opportunities are for you as an MSP. And we'll talk about the idea of must-haves for kind of creating this business opportunity and capitalizing on the services that you can deliver to your customers. And then we're going to talk about kind of the operational details and why it's so vital that we make this a new service available in your environment without necessarily adding complexity to your tool set. We can talk about that idea of a single pane of glass. So lots to get through, and in order to help us go through today's conversation, we brought in an expert from AccelOps. Mike Reinhardt, who is the Director of Product Marketing, is going to take us through the body of the conversation. So Mike, let me turn the time over to you, and then we'll get back together for Q&A.
Thanks a lot, Ryan. I really appreciate it. Happy holidays, everybody. I appreciate you taking the time to join us today, and hopefully you're going to close the year strong. We're going to have tools to think about if you're looking for other ways to augment your current business model. And again, this session actually comes from real life experience that we're having with our own customer base, the MSPs that are taking advantage of the AccelOps tools, and really leveraging that divide between the NOC and SOC to build lasting and long relationships with their end customers. So with that, we'll start the slide presentation. Again, this is a number of slides. We want to keep this interactive, so as questions come up, please do forward those to the Q&A tab down at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be monitoring those as we go through this and try to keep up with everybody's questions as we can. So I'd like to start off with a poll, if I could, because I want to try to tailor this to the audience the best I can. We have customers, MSP customers that come both from the network monitoring world and or the security world. Each has taken advantage of the other side's strengths that Excel Ops brings to them, but I'm curious to the audience, to get a feel for the audience, what the group out there looks like today. So if you wouldn't mind, just take a second, answer this poll for us. We'll give you a few minutes to do that. Just one question, which best describes your area of interest for this webinar today, and then we'll try to tailor that to your specific needs. I'll touch on a number of different areas, but if there's any particular area that pops out as a part of the attendees today, I'll try to do that. So I'll give it one more minute. Okay, we'll go ahead and jump over to the poll results and see what we've got. So it looks like a good mix. We've got a number of folks looking at offering a managed security solution. This is very common. We're seeing a lot of folks today that are offering network monitoring, either up-down or alarming capabilities, looking for ways to add additional value to their offering. They've got a good base of customers. They're trying to grow that, looking for stickier opportunities to engage with their customers. So that's great to see. We're going to definitely touch on a lot of that in our session today. So quick review of the NOC and SOC roles. This is kind of the traditional view of what they do. The Network Operations Center is really focused on what they call power, ping, and pipe. This is kind of an industry buzz phrase that's used around the NOC. They're really focused on performance and availability. Their analysts provide network application and systems skill sets. Their goals are really focused on meeting uptime SLAs. The Security Operations Center is really focused on detecting threats, reacting quickly, recovering from those issues that do face their network today. They're focused on protecting intellectual property, sensitive data, like customer records, et cetera. The analysts are a little more skill set, typically, security engineering skill sets, and they're focused on response time and SLAs, which is becoming more and more critical in today's business world where competition is fierce, agility is key, and they really need to make sure it's being maintained within a business. So we'll look at some of the commonalities first. Each of them traditionally has a call center with Tier 1, 2, and 3 technicians manning those call centers. Tier 1 focused on the work orders, monitoring tools. Tier 2 has the more detailed review and resolution jobs. And then the Tier 3 is traditionally the subject matter expert, the person that escalations go to where the Tier 1 and 2 cannot deal with that. So you've got IT resources in each department, but they are separated by a silo, traditionally having different managers, different buying cycles, different tools, and we'll talk about some of the challenges associated with that. So while their common structure and workflows are the same, they've also got similar challenges that they're dealing with. Talk in depth about some of these listed in the bullet points below. Bimodal IT is a Gartner term that you may or may not have heard of, but we'll talk a little bit about that in depth. The ever-changing workforce and business environment where you've got distributed resources, suppliers, entities, workers, and then the evolving threat landscape. We'll talk about some recent surveys that have to talk about people's worries, where they think the worries are coming from. And then employee attrition is another factor in this, especially in the SOC side of the business. SOC side employees typically last 1.5 years to 2 years and then move on to a new role. So keeping that level of expertise in-house is critical to an organization. So this comes from a Gartner recent study. That top 3 things they think are opportunities for MSPs in today's environment. Again, the bimodal IT being a threat, but also an opportunity for MSPs. The distributed enterprises and users, and the evolving threat landscape. So again, while these are challenges to your customers, these are opportunities for you folks. So just to focus a little bit on the bimodal IT, this is again a concept Gartner has come up with. If you haven't seen this, it's really what they describe as shadow IT. So they have mode 1, who is the traditional buyer. Those folks are traditionally buying things on a 3 or 4 or 5 year window. They're getting CapEx to put their infrastructure in place. They're really focused on reliability, to manage it predictably. Their cycle times are very long. But then you've got the Mode 2 buyer, and they're really focused on agility and getting things right away. So, for example, workers bringing mobile devices to the office and expecting to use those in the office environment. Those aren't traditionally condoned by IT or purchased by IT, but they do have impacts on the IT world, both in the NOC and the SOC, in terms of how they operate. But as more and more devices come onto the network, both known and unknown, those really pose challenges to any business. So again, the distributed resources talks about mobility, where you've got workers that are working in an office and then want to take their tools with them on the road. You may have transient workforce, which is very common in the millennial world, where people come in for a short time work and then leave again. You've got distributed entities, and again, those could be suppliers in remote locations, M&A activity with the business growing. But that also brings disparate systems. Those locations that you're bringing into your fold may or may not have been on the same platform. So either you need to find new IT resources to manage those or get rid of those and fold those into your current solution. So that becomes a challenge. And then evolving threats. So you've got network infrastructure that's in a constant state of flux. You've got public and hybrid clouds, private clouds, remote offices, and then trying to tie that together with your local resources, which also brings thousands of devices to manage, hundreds of applications that are being run, billions of events, and petabytes of data being stored in a network. So let's look at the NOC and SOC threats to security as well as the network that's being driven by that. And these are real-world examples of what's happening to organizations today. So this is from a recent Panama study that they studied 600 businesses. 47% of them said they had had a material breach to their systems in the past year. Industry norms for average days to detect an attack is now 256. That's actually down from last year. But the other disturbing fact is that 81% of those breaches were discovered by a third party, not by the entity itself. So these are potentially consumers going to the FTC saying somebody has stolen my identity. They do their forensics to figure out the source of it, and that becomes a much more challenging thing to manage with your end customers as well as internal to your organization. I'll just quickly highlight some of the big names that came in. Anthem. Healthcare is becoming a big target with traditionally records that lived on paper and in file cabinets have been transferred to electronic health or digital format. Those are becoming big for hackers. We'll talk a little bit about why. Home Depot, JP Morgan. I mean, almost every day you read in the paper, you know, I almost call these things marketing events because it really does underscore the need for the services that ExcelOps brings, but it's also opportunity again for the folks that you're dealing with. And these are breaches that have been reported, so there's a number of them that don't make the front page, but are collecting in multiple databases throughout the internet, and we can provide links for some of those that update on a daily basis. And we'll talk about some of the drivers for the hackers. What's causing hackers to come into these networks, people to attack networks, and it's the value of the data that they can glean from that. So credit card data and PCI compliance is important. The value to hackers is $4 to $8. The credit card, including the data, they call that is a high value target. And electronic health records is most lucrative to hackers these days at $50 per record. One of the websites we follow shows a 68% increase in healthcare attacks because of that value. They can purchase prescriptions, get on healthcare services under a pseudonym. It's a very valuable resource to hackers. But opportunities for you folks. We'll focus on Target and some of the impacts on them. They're kind of your child. It's one that people remember the most because it was one of the first and the biggest. But that one incident or breach that they had caused a 46% drop in their year-over-year quarterly revenues. They actually lost 40 million cards. They only replaced half of those, and that costed the business $162 million. And then the projected cost after all the class action lawsuits, et cetera, is projected to be close to $1 billion to their bottom line. So you can imagine that's getting exposure and high-level experience, or high-level exposure, yes, at the C-levels as well as the boards of companies these days, because these things do impact CEOs' jobs as well as boards' revenue streams. But aside from the revenue impacts, and these are tools that you can go to the customer and talk about, it really impacts the trust of companies and customers that are doing business with you. You know, this is a good study that was just done recently about how long did it take you to have a positive perception of a company following a data breach. And you can see that the 6 months to a year is the highest, I'm sorry, that's the lowest period of time. And then others are still not happy with that. And Nuala O'Connor, who was the first Homeland Security CEO of privacy for the U.S., says privacy and security are becoming an important brand differentiator, and companies are looking for a mindset of both meeting compliance requirements, but also becoming a steward of that consumer data. It's got to be protected like a treasure within a business. So let's talk about the divide, which is the focus of the call today. So current security and monitoring tools, I mean, if you think about your customer's environment, they've got a number of different devices that they're managing, a number of different applications that they're managing, services that they're managing, locations that we talked about. All of those, in many cases, come with a different solution set for managing and monitoring that environment. It's a very complex environment then. It's very difficult to cross-correlate that data. You may be collecting it, but it's not going to be correlated in real time. So it really creates, back to that, how long it took somebody to discover a breach in their network. You can see why now with all the difficult tools they have to deal with on a regular basis. And in many cases, businesses don't have the security and monitoring tools in place today. It's tough for them to get the budget. The CFO doesn't see the value in it because it's strategic to the business. It's not going to bring in additional revenue. So a lot of them are dealing with this as a post-breach event monitoring and management tool. So event occurs, they react, act, and then they have to do post-issue forensics. So it requires pulling multiple people in from multiple departments. There's no single source of their analytics. It's kind of an all hands on deck. Okay, everybody in the IT shop, let's get together in a conference room, bring all your data with you. Let's figure out what happened and where. You've got to review multiple system data, multiple data sources, and then manually try to cross-correlate that data to try to figure out what happened and where do we put in the plugs to fix that in the future. So that has tremendous impacts on both internal and external SLAs. The mean time to respond or repair is slow, and it impacts your customer service, your customer experience. People coming to the web, for example, and especially this is critical in the holiday time frame, you know, where we've got the majority of people, or 2.9 billion, I think, happened online this week for online shopping. Those things can tremendously impact a revenue stream, not to mention a customer's experience with you. And then unproductive workers. If they can't get to the tools they need, they don't have the resources they need quickly, that impacts their productivity as well as their ability to help customers. So kind of in line with the evolving threat landscape, there was a recent Black Hat survey that was interesting, and these guys are really the kind of IT professionals, the security-focused professionals out there in the world. They were asked, what do you think is the greatest concern 2 years from now? So looking out 20, what do you think is going to be the biggest impact? And the thing that scares them the most is Internet of Things, and primarily because nobody really knows what's going to be driven by that, what security challenges might become from that, and don't have the tools to deal with that, or potentially don't have the tools to deal with that, with things like wearables coming into an environment, you know, devices that are talking to each other as opposed to humans, where you're getting marketing focused at individual devices. So Fitbit, for example, might be, somebody could be watching your a number of steps, and at some point they're going to pop up on your cell phone that says, here's a cheeseburger and milkshake coupon. So you're going to get devices marketing to devices based on data that's out there. And then sophisticated attacks directed at the organization themselves. So, espionage, foreign surveillance is another key metric that all kind of concern a particular group. And again, these are the kind of the geeks of the geeks. This is not your traditional business guys that are really deep in it on a regular basis. They were then asked, what's your readiness to respond to that threat looking 2 years out? And not surprising, 73% of them said, we don't have the staff. We don't have either the people or the system or the skill sets to deal with that. So while that's a little concerning, it's also, again, an opportunity that many MSPs are taking advantage of today, building tools that can then bring in any sort of network, any sort of device that touches that network and any changes to that network, and being able to report on that and alert on that. So we'll talk about how ExcelOps helps to leverage that divide. And again, to go to the audience here, information security is growing very strongly at 13.8% in 2015, but the IT security outsourcing segment of that is growing the fastest at close to 25%. So great opportunity for you folks, and a lot of reasons why many of our network performance and monitoring MSPs are looking to a security solution to add to their mix. And then the other thing I talk to MSPs about is, you're not just securing a network. You need to dig into it and understand, what's riding on the network, what applications are running through that network, and who cares, and what's the impact if that's not working. So try to understand from your customer's perspective what's the impact to them, because if you're talking to an IT professional, this then gives them leverage to go back to the business and say, I'm helping the sales department, or I'm helping the HR department, or I'm helping in compliance management. But it gives you different venues to talk to within a business, and you focus your messaging not just on securing assets, but the brand and the business's financial integrity, the competitive advantage, customer satisfaction and experience, all those regulatory compliance especially, all those are key communications to your business to add additional stickiness, additional horizontal team people to go to, additional key stakeholders in a decision-making process that will help you in your sales efforts. But in order to support that, you need a tool that can help you work through all infrastructure types that we showed in the diagram previously, to be able to fix, identify, and prevent faster than they have the ability to today. And then you need tools that integrate all aspects of a business into a view to help you better monitor and maintain an environment and show additional value and stickier products. So no surprise, ExcelOps does work through any sort of infrastructure type, including the ones shown here, the public and private clouds, hybrid clouds, remote offices, whether those are suppliers or individual employees, as well as your on-site civic needs. We're also seeing a growth in the VM hypervisor world. It's becoming increasingly fragmented, though, and your customers have many different hypervisors running in their network. You need to be able to support all of those, again, under your solution. The ExcelOps solution can plug into any of those cloud services today, such as AWS, Rackspace, running VMware, Red Hat, et cetera. And one of the other key strengths that the ExcelOps solution brings, and it's one that really does differentiate you as an MSP in managing and maintaining a customer's network. We have a very robust CMDB, or centralized management database discovery engine that essentially you plug in IP addresses, credentials for applications, and our tool will go out and discover all the devices attached to that. So that's routers, switches, et cetera, printers, all the servers, all their operating systems, and it'll build a network topology map that is interactive. It will tell you where the devices are, how they're cross-correlated to each other, which ports are working for which application. So if you see a device having an attack or some sort of problem, you can better understand by taking that device off the network. What's that going to impact? Who's that going to impact? What applications is that going to impact, et cetera. But it also provides you a baseline tool to give a customer to say, here's what your network looks like today. We can set in the infrastructure for managing and monitoring any changes to that, as well as the configurations on the devices that are plugged into the network itself. This is a really good tool as a standalone offering by itself. We do have customers that will just do that and go build a topology. We've had some customers come back with devices that were attached to their network that they weren't aware of. They did a merger and acquisition in one case where one of the local offices plugged into their corporate network through the CMDB discovery tool. They saw that through a back was another pipe going to their another Australia office that had multiple servers attached to that they hadn't baked into their overall management and infrastructure solution. So it'll discover things that may or may not supposed to be there, and also provide you a baseline for moving forward on reporting tools. But again, all of this then kind of synthesizes into a way to more rapidly identify, fix, and prevent problems, and gives you the tools to report back to a customer in real time, either as it happens daily, weekly, monthly, however you structure your offering. The tool also provides a number of out-of-the-box reports. There's not a lot of professional services needed up front, but there are some capabilities to build customized tools for unique customer needs. So we've really focused on the security side of things and compliance management. So PCI reports, we've got a number of those. I think there's 65 baked in reports for HIPAA compliance. NERC, SIP is another growing area, SANS requirements. But again, 2,000 customizable fields to build your own reports from scratch that can fit your own unique needs. But it makes it easy to get value quickly into a business out of the box. You plug the service in, it does the CMDB. You've now got reporting tools that you can apply to that CMDB for any changes to the environment, any alarm or alerting capabilities that you've built in as triggers can happen day one. The other benefit that we offer to MSPs is that you can carve your XLOps solution into a multi-tenant architecture. This is key for both monitoring individual, both physical and logical environments, but also individual customers from a billing perspective. So we have, for example, some higher education institutions where it's a teaching hospital that is built into the network. They want to keep that separate from the admissions office, and separate from the student union office, and separate from the alumni office. Each of those can be a separate domain managed within the multi-tenant architecture. It also allows you to carve out domains that are associated with a particular application, such as credit card processing for PCI compliance monitoring and management. So you may have a large network, but only a small portion of it focused on credit card processing. You may not want to look at all the noise from all those different elements in the network. You just want to focus on the ones that are germane to the PCI compliance monitoring and auditing. This gives you the ability to do that and carve that out simply. So again, XLOP's key strength is that we really take both the network performance monitoring capabilities as well as the security operations capabilities and plug them into a single pane of glass, integrating all of those for real-time cross-correlation of data for both rapid identification and then the ability to quickly remediate issues as you see them pop up onto the network, making it a very simple tool to use, but also a great reporting tool for adding value to your current service offering today. So some of the key elements: maintain your network operations capabilities, your security operations capabilities, but it consolidates that all into an overall view of your network, the ability to manage compliance and controls much more seamlessly. It gives you an image and a version change control. It logs into a firewall, for example. You're going to get an alert to that. Did they make a change? You get an alert. Then you also get a side-by-side, what was the before and after if they made a change, and then the ability to revert back. You can validate users, so if a user comes into a device, they've got the right credentials, they got the right login and password, but their IP address that they're emanating from is, let's say, in the Ukraine. That might want to be set up as an alarm. You may have a known and friendly IP address set, and then anything outside of that's going to cause alarms. You've also got incident application correlation and scoping. So if something happens, you understand what devices were associated with that, what applications were associated with that, and the ability to quickly remediate that and drill into what is the cause and how do I remediate that. So the value proposition that you can bring to a business beyond integrating all these different locations and users into a single application and reporting on that, it's really helping them provide business financial integrity, protecting their brand, increasing productivity for their users. Customer satisfaction and customer experience is key these days. Intellectual property protection and regulatory compliance. All these things are getting on the radar now of C-levels beyond the CIO, CTO. In fact, Gartner is predicting that the IT staff will inevitably in the next 5 years be reporting to the CEO because it is becoming a strategic initiative. And we're also seeing more and more boards getting involved in security policy management, security purchases, security preventative measures. It's becoming a key business strategic initiative and helping businesses be more competitive, but also staying out of the papers. I'm going to continue to push Gartner here, but they've got some really strong following on the MSP side. They've identified a number of different areas that MSPs can add value. Our tool can provide a wide array, a myriad of things, or you can focus in on one specific aspect of that. We've got some MSPs that are just providing PCI compliance for end users. They provide the CMDB report. Any changes are reported on. Any alerts are triggered to specific individuals that they've identified. They provide monthly audits, annual audits, daily audits. Data is stored, so in case an auditor does come through, they can have the answers to the questions like, when was this device added? When was this taken off? Did you notice this breach? When? How did you fix it? All those answers are available to them. We've also got some that are focused on HIPAA compliance and some that are focused on doing both security and performance, network performance monitoring. So the tool is very flexible. The different types of reports that we've got available make it easy. There's a number of them listed here as well. Auditing, project management, education programs all go along with that. The majority of breaches or problems that occur on a network today are actually happen because of internal problems in the company. So it's either users misusing the services that they've been given or workers that have been let go recently that still have their credentials. They haven't been turned off and are vulnerable to attack. So it's key to go into a business and help them understand where are the potential vulnerabilities, but then also help them manage towards success in that area. And again, to push Gartner behind you guys, they're recommending that Gartner's saying that organizations should prepare to evaluate security outsourcing services and include the leaders in the bimodal project execution, because again, those areas are very threatening to use infrastructure if you don't know what's going on, but you also need to know what is the requirements that being brought in by that organization. How does that impact the overall network? What are the impacts to the business if that fails? And then by 2020, 40% of all security technology acquisitions will be directly influenced by the MSSPs and on-prem security outsourcing providers, up from less than 15% today, up to 40% by 2020. So that's a tremendous growth area for you folks. So I've run through a bunch of slides. I'm going to open it up for Q&A at the moment. If you do want to, there's an address below there, info@com. We'd love to do concept, plug our tool into your network, do a CMDB topology map to hand to you to show how you can add value to your customers. But again, I'll stop here for any Q&A.
Mike, thank you very much. That's great information, and obviously, as your research shows and as our research shows, it's obviously a lucrative opportunity, something big that customers are paying attention to, and it occupies a large chunk of their both focus as well as budget going forward. One of the questions that I'd love to get your input on from a strategy level, and we've had some discussion going on during this session about this topic. In the history of technology solution providers, security has always been kind of a big and lucrative opportunity, but it's one of those that's been very specialized, right? So if I am a security solution provider and I specialize and I focus on that, people will take me seriously, whereas if I'm a generalist and I just do a little bit of security here and there, it's been kind of tough to build that specialization or area of credibility. In your experience, and as you look at the market right now, is it a valid strategy for somebody that has those network-related services to add security onto their portfolio? And if so, what are the things we need to do to really kind of build a brand and credibility in that new area?
No, that's a great question, and that's really where we're seeing the most growth at ExcelOps. A lot of folks standardize on our solution to do, just like you said, the network performance monitoring and management capability. That's becoming more and more commoditized, typically an hourly rate or by report. The value that security brings is it gives you a voice into multiple different that you're not talking to today. So beyond the NOC into the SOC, obviously, but across the organization horizontally into other lines of business managers that depend on that network for their success every single day. So to the extent that you can build and solutions around that and provide reporting tools on that at the level down to the IT technical, it really adds to your overall solution. So you've got an existing base that you can go to and just ask them kind of basic questions. How are you guys managing PCI compliance today, for example? Because that touches almost any organization, whether you're a nonprofit, a school, a financial institution. Almost everybody is processing payment cards and are subject to those regulations. So in some cases, they may not have a solution for that, or if they do, ask them how it's working. And would it be great if you could integrate that along with network performance monitoring and management, because those are potentially some areas where your PCI compliance could break. So let me add this one incremental piece onto it. But it's a way to kind of add additional value across an organization horizontally, but also see what other aspects of the business that you can help manage better. And even proactively give them reports to the things that you're currently monitoring with our solution today. Just kind of as a teaser, this is some of the things we could be doing for you. Here's some things we noticed. Did you guys know that? You know, you have to be careful how you position that, but it obviously gives you, again, a much broader voice within a business, a much stickier product offering within a business, higher value in the services that you sell, and a longer-term relationship with that customer.
That's great. And I'll tell you, I think that there are obviously some technical issues that we need to be aware of, but I think you touched on one of the most urgent issues of being able to add these new things to the portfolio, getting our sales organization to bring it up, you know, empowering the customer-facing resources to be confident enough that they can mention security and not feel like they're going to get just wiped out in the expert conversation. So that's definitely a big one.
Yeah, I was going to say, really go back to the what does it mean to the business, and really focus on protecting the brand, customer experience. These are the things that are in their world. They don't, if you go across lines of business, those are the things that they're thinking about. How to make my team more productive? How to protect the network from going wacky when I've got a big marketing campaign going on? I don't want to lose those leads. But keep business vernacular, not just network monitoring and management or security monitoring and management, but what application are you monitoring and managing? Again, what is the value to the business of that application, and keep it in those terms. And I'll be honest with the team that's on the call here is CFOs traditionally run the CFO department. IT reports up to them. They look at IT as an expense. So it's hard to get the mind share of a CFO when they're used to you coming to them for a 3 or 5 year tranche of money. You're going to make a big CapEx investment. That should last that period of time. They're going to make you squeeze that investment as long as possible. Tools like this, though, help them better understand how do we keep the business out of the front page, how do we keep our customer revenue streams current and going forward, how do we stay competitive. So it gives you, again, a different conversation to have with the people that are moving the purse strings, showing the value that you can bring to a business beyond just the monitoring of the network.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because it's not another big CapEx conversation to have. It's an OpEx, it's an ongoing real-time conversation, and I think that the fact that that's financially a little bit more addressable for the customer also speaks to the fact that this stuff doesn't happen just one time, but it is real-time, all the time, ongoing monitoring that's necessary. One of the things that you touched on earlier in terms of the multi-tenant architecture kind of sparked a few questions in the audience that I'd like to get a little bit more detail on. I like the idea of customization. Like you said, some customers are going to have one or two apps or just their PCI responsibilities that are of a critical nature, and then other things not so much, right? That kind of customization within the single customer, as well as the ability to manage multiple customers. Question that comes up in terms of that, the dashboards that we use to look at those things and the way that we configure the monitoring and the reporting, are those pre-configured? Are they standardized? Can we customize the way that the dashboards look among multiple customers or between separate, say, application lines within a single customer?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Yes, so as an MSP provider, you can look at all of your customers in aggregate and see how your customers are performing against each other versus averages on a regular basis, down to the micro level of one particular site or location. But again, once you build that management database, you've now got the building blocks, or kind of the Legos, to put together what network views you want to look at. And then you have the ability to customize what alarms or triggers that you want to see that pop up on the dashboards, and which dashboards are presenting what type of information. We've got a tremendous amount of rich information, how it's presented, and reports that we can pull. But yeah, you want to keep the down important as opposed to the overall network if that's not part of your world. You want to focus in on the elements that are the key to your service offering, making sure you're providing the right alerts and alarms and dashboards associated with that, both to you as an MSP provider, but then you provide dashboard views to your IT consumers of that information, as well as the C-levels in that organization at maybe a high level that maybe shows pie charts and bar charts. The IT person can have a deeper level of reporting and dashboard capabilities, but all that is customizable down to the user level as to what they can see and capabilities they have to change the data.
That's great. I'll tell you, one of the hard lessons I think we've learned as MSPs over the years is that if we provide the same level or even content of reporting to different people inside the end user organization, we can really overwhelm people with things they don't care about or miss the details of what they think is particularly important. So that customizability and how we show it and who we show it to, right down to the user level, I think that's great, and it really is that's the distinguishing factor for one MSP to set their services apart from another MSP. I think that one of the challenges we've been observing in network monitoring is that as we've standardized and automated so many of the activities, one MSP starts to look a lot like another MSP. But this is an area where customization really does draw out the value proposition. So I think that's really interesting. A technical question for you then, in terms of the way that this implementation happens and the way that a customer, well, A, if I'm an MSP, how do I get spun up on this? And then B, that process to spin up a customer, whether I'm doing everything or just certain customized elements. What's my onboarding process technically to get these systems set up, the tools for the MSP? And then what are the dynamics to bring a customer on board? But how long does it take? Is it a heavy lifting? How does the data get brought in? If you can talk about that onboarding process a little bit, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So, I highly encourage whoever's asking that question and anybody else that would like to take advantage of our demo, because we'll go through in real time what that looks like on a webinar to kind of show you some screenshots. But in essence, you purchase the service from us. You can set up all your administrative rules and who's got access to what in terms of and then that becomes your tool to the world. We'll also brand it with your brand, so when your customers are looking at the data, it'll have the MSP brand versus the ExcelOps brand and the reporting capability or reporting tools that you're offering. And then in terms of bringing a customer up, in essence, you plug into their network. They provide you the range of IP addresses that are on their network, or a broad range if you want to just keep it open. Then you also have the ability to plug in the login and password credentials for the services that are running on the network. And then the CM tool really just automatically builds the topology for you. It'll assign port and application correlations. Again, it's a really powerful tool to go into a business with, just to say, let me spend a day with you. Let's take a look at your network. Let's see what elements are. Does this look like the topology that you have today? And then you can then customize that CMDB into, okay, what are the elements that we need to monitor and manage? What are they associated with? Is it a PCI environment? Is it a HIPAA environment? Is it overall network performance and monitoring that you want to accomplish? Is it overall security, threat management that you want to accomplish? And you can drag and drop any of the elements from that topology into a domain for monitoring and managing. And then it's really setting the rules associated with what things are watched, what are normal conditions versus abnormal conditions, what's a P0, P1 type of an alarm. All those things are very customizable. Once you set it, that becomes a baseline. And then as a part of your offering, you're going to be kind of tuning that ongoing as your customer's network changes and morphs and adds things and deletes things. And that's the other point that I guess I should have made earlier, is that the solution that was very scalable. So if you're adding additional devices to a network, a virtual service is not a hardware-based solution, so it's very simple to add and delete network elements and grow as your customers grow. We've got very large customers today. Staples probably being one of our biggest, one that's got 2,000 Staples locations both in the U.S. and internationally, 30,000 PCI devices on their network. So it scales from mom and pop who don't have IT resources to manage and monitor their networks to very large multinational organizations. We've got customers on 6 continents. So again, this is a global solution, not just a U.S.-based solution.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. There are very small customers who have very sensitive data that would find this kind of a service very interesting, and there are very, very large customers who, while they may have a general platform of security, don't have a specific real-time monitoring type of an application for very key devices or key applications. So I think that kind of scalable, the fact that I can grow, that's cool, but the fact that I can use this solution to deploy for large customers or small customers, that simplifies a lot of what my training and operating requirements are as an MSP. Certainly, the visual tools.
Potential market.
Yeah, it does. Lots of customers out there. The visual tools that you're talking about for configuration and kind of walking a customer through that, in my experience, I think that's an excellent asset, because historically, getting the IT department to understand the topology of a network, that's not rocket science. They live and breathe that stuff. But the business decision makers, the financial decision makers, they don't necessarily understand the infrastructure configuration, and that leaves them kind of mystified when we start talking about the different machines, the different services, how we organize network neighborhoods and stuff. So those kinds of tools certainly help us with the onboarding process. You mentioned some of those key customers that you deal with in this environment. As I look at this kind of service, anything attached to anything financial is obviously going to be an urgent one, but do you see that there are some key vertical segments or customer types that are going to be the early fast adopters of this, where we, as MSPs, where we could kind of start the focus?
Yeah, I would say focus on where the compliance regulations are the strictest and most stringent and have the biggest impacts to a business. So healthcare, we're seeing tremendous traction in for good reason because of HIPAA compliance. Not only can you be subject to fines, but also jail time for not complying with that. So that'll get people's attention in C-level roles within a healthcare organization. Higher ed is another one, believe it or not, because they've got HIPAA standards that they have to deal with, both with teaching hospitals as well as with student health records. They're also processing payment card information for books and tuition, et cetera. We've got PCI compliance. They've also got federal regulations called FERPA, about individual privacy, things they have to monitor and manage. And many of them have state requirements that impact their funding for non-compliance. So if they don't protect student and faculty records, they could be fined and or lose funding for their organization. Financial obviously is a huge market for us as well. We've got a number of national and international financial institutions on our solution today, as well as some kind of local credit unions that may have two regulations. But again, financial data is very critical and very susceptible to hacking, so a strong source for those types of environments. And then, believe it or not, the federal government or the government institutions in general, you would think that they were the most secure, but we've seen a number of breaches this year alone that have impacted both state, local, and federal level institutions. And again, the ability to quickly identify that, cross-correlate the data from multiple sources to hone in on what's the source, get beyond that 200 and something day average. Anything you can do in those 5 or 6 verticals are probably your top and low-hanging fruit. Retail is another one, as we mentioned, staples earlier, because of the, and especially this time of year with, I think I mentioned earlier, $2 billion was spent on Black Friday this year, or $3 billion, I think it was, 12% year-over-year growth. A lot of that's being done through mobile devices as well now. So again, lots of value you can add to those institutions. And top of mind right now is, Christmas season is huge for, or holiday season is huge for businesses. This is where a majority of them get their biggest source of revenue throughout the year. And you can help them monitor and manage anything that's going to be compromising that environment. Really does provide you a much stickier offering and ways to go back to the business with showing how you can add value and revenue sources that you're protecting.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think anytime we can bring the security conversation out of the IT realm and into the business realm with legitimate financial implications and branding implications, that makes us much more attractive to that end user. And it's not just, I'll tell you, we recently did a focus group with some owners, operators of medium-sized to small-sized physician practices, right? The business administrators that run doctors' offices and partnerships and things like that. And while they are aware of regulation, it's less of historically, it's been less of, boy, I got to get busy and do something about this, and it's been more of a source of, I'm going to throw my hands in the air because I literally don't know how to solve this problem. As urgent as it is, as required as it is, I literally don't have any idea how to get started. As an MSP, approaching them and saying, not a massive capital outlay, it's a subscription opportunity, it begins immediately, and we can customize and tweak this thing as it evolves. I think that's a great approach tactic, and like you said, follow the money. Anywhere that money gets transacted, I think that there's an inevitable requirement for regulatory compliance. But a question for you in terms of those kinds of resources. Obviously, being aware of the acronyms is one thing, but if we're talking about regulatory compliance, are you aware of places where an MSP and their sales organization can go and learn about, like, I don't have to be a PhD in bureaucrat speak to understand it. How do I begin to understand the urgencies and the targets of whether it's HIPAA or PCI or FERC or anything like that? Do you have any resources for learning the regulatory compliance world?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's an area that I'm trying to grow out on our own website. I joined XLOps a couple months ago, 3 months ago now, I guess. Yeah. the gap that I want to fill and make it easy for everybody to find the information, to come up with a solution set that's easy to go to market with. I have spent a number of times this year in the field with MSPs, helping them go to market, developing their sales strategy, training them on the solution, how to go to the customer and ask the right questions. We do have some data on our web for PCI compliance. We also have another webinar coming up this week that we're sponsoring on PCI. So we do have resources available on the web for that. HIPAA is probably one that we're going to be adding a lot more to, but happy to send people links to data that currently lives on the open forum website, but also happy to help with case studies from all the different verticals that we've worked with today. We're building those out in much more broadly than we currently have today as well. But you know, if you can use and leverage an existing customer in any particular vertical, it does help another potential customer consume that, because now they can see, okay, this is somebody who's in the same chair I'm in, had the same problems. This is how they solved it. I can better understand that. So I would highly encourage both to leverage the case studies we have currently, but happy to help with building those for those MSPs that are looking for additional resources in that area.
That's great. I couldn't agree more. A real-world case study in a relevant vertical business model is perhaps the best education that a customer can use to get started thinking about what they could do. They will all totally believe that their situation is different from what's shown in the case study, of course, but it gets them started in the conversation. And my recommendation for an MSP getting started in this conversation is, don't try to become an expert in every regulation in a minute. Pick one that is particularly urgent, tied to your vertical target audience. If you know your customers and what their requirements for security are, pick one and focus on that area. Look for those kinds of correlated case studies, and then you can add more compliance details, and then you can get better and better at all of the regulations. I don't think any of us will ever be an expert in all the regulations, but where there is compliance, there is opportunity.
Absolutely. Well said.
Yeah, lots and lots of details here. And again, to those that are listening in with us, the contact information that Mike has provided here, his contact information directly if you want to reach out and discuss any of the opportunities or details that are specific to your model and the way that you might bring this into your portfolio, as well as the general box there at info@excelops.com. That's going to be someplace where you can go to get some demo information and start to really consider this for yourselves. As a third party in this marketplace, I cannot say just how frequently we see and hear the security conversation, and customers are eager to find a trusted partner who can solve this problem for them. If you're already a trusted partner in one service area, this is a great way to expand your influence and really add to your not just credibility but financial opportunity inside the existing install base. So ideally, more opportunity, shorter sales cycles. It ought to be a good way to leverage and grow your practice. We are out of time in the live broadcast here, so we will wrap things up. I really appreciate everybody's time and energy to join us today. Thank you for the questions that you've submitted. As always, there are more of these kinds of conversations to be had. Obviously, we have others that are scheduled. If you're interested in more of the Channel Expert Hour opportunities, you can go to thevarguy.com and under the webcast tab, find a calendar of scheduled events and topics. The next one that is currently on our calendar on 12/9, talking about high availability and taking your customers' system protection and data protection to the next level beyond just disaster recovery. So lots of good information on the web as well as in these live conversations. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Thank you, everybody, and we will wrap it up at this point and send you back to your business day. Thanks.